Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, there's a main case that deals with this group known as Les Fleurs de Mal, which is basically like this. It's based on some almost twisted society of kind of like top class people who want thrills, so they set up these circumstances around to make them feel alive again. People who basically have enough money to get whatever they want something else, so basically they get thrills by watching basically people struggle to potentially survive. So this interesting case leads to this guy named Charles and his wife Miss Radcliffe, and so she and her husband actually signed up for this group. It's kind of like an invitation thing, but only the husband went because the wife kind of backed out at the last second, because the whole thing of it's kind of morbid watching people die. And even, it's like their marriage wasn't perfect and it was going to bring back life to their marriage, and it kind of did, but it's like she didn't go, but her husband ended up in a condition he did, and she didn't understand and know why, but it's like, oh, okay, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of makes sense. Because basically the victims in this situation, this Fleur de Mal situation, are people who show up. It's like everyone takes the risk because you have a chance of being there was like the watches that were putting on everyone. I didn't realize it was just on any. I was wondering if it was going to be between Haram and Ms. Radcliffe, but it's like, no, it's everyone. So anyone has a chance. It's like if we're all willing to, we're all here to kind of feel that rush of life, and we can't ask you to take the risk if we aren't all willing to take the risk to try and compensate, to make it seem like, oh, it's all fair, whatever the case may be. We do have Haram going under cover with Ms. Radcliffe, which I think was kind of interesting, because Haram wanted to do this because obviously he's being sent out because he needs more field experience and stuff like that, but also Harold wants to give Elizabeth the more space to hey, you need to leave early, come in late, it's totally fine because you're working your responsibilities. You got Agnes back and you want to be a big part of her life. You missed some parts of her life already, so you want to make sure hey, when it's all said and done, that everything is you're able to enjoy your time as a mother and not have to be away from her for too long and stuff like that. So I think Liz appreciates that that Harold is giving her that opportunity, and it's also a nice opportunity for Aram to kind of get back out there in the field to get more experience, because I had to kind of compensate for the fact is Samar's not around, because normally it'd be her and Wrestler, but now that that's the case, and now Samar's gone, and now Liz has got this mother responsibility, this kind of a thing, so we need someone else to kind of step up, and Aram is the next best choice. So him getting some undercover experience, I love, because obviously you see bits of himself kind of creep out, but at the beginning when they're interviewing the guy from Florida Moss, he's interviewing them, Aram plays it so well, the undercover angle. It's it's almost flawless. I'm kind of disappearing into that role a little bit. That was kind of neat. It's actually kind of sad, his reasoning behind it, because it's he's I don't understand her loss fully, but I can to a certain degree, the whole not wanting to feel anything, and it's Harold's right, the whole Samar situation. I haven't really asked you how you are, and he's I'm okay. Basically he's getting by. It's it doesn't hurt as much. It's still kind of that constant pain, but he's kind of trying not to feel anything. So it's almost kind of perfect for them to it's almost I guess in a way it kind of creates a bond between them, because they lost people that they care about in different respects. But nevertheless, I was kind of under the impression, because obviously these traps are these devices which are almost like some Saw level things. The first one at the beginning of the episode reminds me of that VR game. I'm blanking of it. Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. I think that's the name of it, right? I saw the titling recently and I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while, but it kind of reminds me of that. I'm the instructions are there. Obviously it works differently than the game, but it kind of just reminded me of that. Okay, here's a bomb, you have to figure out how to defuse it. And dude almost thought he got away. He's I did it. Because he was, almost giving up. And then he says, I did it. And didn't. And the bomb exploded and literally guts flying everywhere. And everyone's just clapping yes. Oh. It's almost like they're getting off to it. It's that's super, super messed up. And so, nevertheless, I was almost expecting Haram to kind of get chosen, because obviously the traps are meant to be a situation where it's there is a way to get out, but it's a very, very slim thing. You have to do certain circumstances to get out. So obviously they're putting you in a circumstance where you're not going to be thinking clearly because you're panicked, you're under time. So that's the whole point. But the guy had made a point to be like, oh, if anyone gets captured, this is actually how you do it. But whoever it is would have to be willing to do that. And, you'd have to think of doing certain things because you'd have to dislocate like your finger and your thumb, your index finger and your thumb to kind of get to where you need to get out, because the key is a lie. It makes you think like, oh, that's the way, and you're so focused on like, oh, the key, but it's not working. Like, how am I? There's another way to get out, but you have to think of it. You have to be willing to cause yourself pain to do it. That's what I was thinking. Like maybe Aram would be the one that gets captured, and it's like, oh, because he's going through so much pain, he just does it himself to like, oh, figures it out. There's almost some part of me that was almost wondering if it'd be like a wrestler, or would it be like Liz, or would it be Reddington. But of course, those are the people in my mind. I'm thinking like maybe they would come to that conclusion, or whatever the case may be. But it ends up being Miss Radcliffe, and obviously seeing her kind of in a position where she might suffocate reminds him of like Samara. It's like he blames himself because it's like, I didn't get to Samara in time. She almost died. And everything that happened to her, like he blames himself for not being there quick enough and didn't react. It's like, I almost lost her. I'm not going to let that happen under these circumstances. So Aram like kicks into overdrive. He goes badass mode, hits the guy with the champagne glass, takes his gun, bam, bam, bam. I'm like, yo, going old Jason Bourne. Borderline, James Bond over here. Okay, Aram, I see you. Like, it's so impressive when you see him like doing that, because it's almost like, because you almost still underestimate him as like the tech dude. It's like, nah, Aram has shown himself like he's grown. I mean, to be fair, his whole thing against Reddington last season kind of shows you he's not the same person he was before. Since losing Samara, it shifted something in him. He was already down that path anyway, but it shifted even more. So I thought it was kind of interesting. He ended up shooting the glass, ran out of bullets, threw it at the weak spots. Boom, it broke. He got Miss Radcliffe out of there. That was pretty dope. And then like they're close up together. She's like, thanks. And he's like, for what? She's like, for saving me. And she kisses him. It's like, ooh, what? But they end up getting captured. There was a part of me that they was thinking like, oh, because she kissed him, I'm like, don't tell me she's actually part of this, and it was all a Blade playing trap, and he's going to end up. But it's like, no, the device is broken, so not unless they have another one ready to immediately put him in there. But it's like, nope. Luckily, the FBI shows up because he had turned off the jammer, all the lights, so the jammer had time to kind of give them a signal long enough for them to pinpoint where they were. So luckily, things kind of ended well in that regard. So everyone got arrested. It's actually kind of super interesting with the whole aspect of like what this means going forward, because Aram is kind of self-conscious, being like, yeah, I did well when the time came, because he blames himself for not acting quicker. He thinks like, oh, I should have acted much faster than I did, but I didn't. But, Harold's still kind of like, no, you did great. You did well. The fact is, you should be proud of yourself. And obviously, the whole situation is it's easier to kind of, for him, it's like feeling nothing is kind of easier, but it's kind of like, since Samara, it's like you shouldn't kind of shut yourself off. The fact, because it's like, oh, because he brings up the whole fact is that, it's like during all that excitement, Miss Radcliffe kind of started to come alive. She felt something. And, Cooper is like, in all honesty, like, people who are looking for the excitement, kind of that thrill of life, he actually is kind of envious to kind of understand them and know them, to know that, that aspect of you are trying to seek something out of life. And it's like, in Aram's case, is the fact of the matter is he is, trying to feel nothing, and feeling nothing is worse than feeling pain, because it's just like, at least, even if you're feeling pain, that means you're feeling something. That means you are living, and it's like shutting that side of yourself off isn't living, So we do see at the end Miss Radcliffe and Aram. I'm like, oh, that's definitely going to be interesting. Well, let's not forget his ex, before, Samara and everything, was kind of a criminal. She was the hacker and all that stuff. So it's like, I'm curious, like, is he almost going to go down that route again? Like, the thing is, she's kind of a bit of a thrill seeker. So part of me thinks like, oh, it's nice now, but eventually it might turn a little sinister where she starts upping the ante of getting more and more thrilled. There's also the thing of like, well, she is married, her husband's under the circumstances he's under, but still it's just kind of like, she said it was like, my husband's still alive. The man I was married to, he's alive, but my husband died, so I'm like, and that's what I was talking about earlier, because I think he was probably chosen, because they were like, yeah, Fleur Demal did that to him, but didn't know what the circumstances was. It's like, because he was chosen, and obviously they didn't know that at the time, but That's what I'm meant when I was wrong. Regardless, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but I'm just curious to see what that ultimately ends up meaning, because I'm like, oh, that relationship is definitely going to be interesting in many different regards. So maybe it's just all going to be good. It's like both of them feeling again, but part of me thinks like, is Ram going to start doing that too? Maybe he'll start taking more risk because he wants to feel that, or feel anything, So we'll see. Maybe this is just a little bit of a fling. Maybe it'll turn into something more. What if Samar returns and this whole thing is still going on? Like, I'm curious. Oh, because Samara's not supposed to be able to return because she's forever going to be on a run. But we'll ultimately see how that all ends up playing out. Obviously, another side of this episode, obviously Reddington's trying to get some info from that dude about trying to track down, more specifically, the illusionist, Steinhill, so that he can get to Katarina. And the dude doesn't want to give up the information because it's like, yeah, you've kind of screwed me over in the past. Like, my businesses have fallen apart. My wife left me for my competitor. And Reddington's like, well, to be fair, she was screwing your competitor for a while anyway, which pissed him off. And Jinbei was like, see, I told you it wasn't going to work. He's like, yeah, you were 100% right. Had to try, but he's forced our hand. So they end up bringing in Francis. Now I get Giddy. I'm like, yeah, she's part of the team and everything. She's like, I got a reservation with my husband, and it's like for our anniversary. He's like, oh, congratulations. It's like, oh, we got this book. It's like, if you want to read it, like, we got the complete series. So it's like, relax, chill. Watch a movie, watch TV, you read a book. I love that. It's like, you're basically kidnapping me. It's like, well, the fact of the matter is, you kind of work for me, you kind of owe me. So that was kind of pretty neat. And I'm loving that she's potentially going to be a part of the team or whatever. But regardless, that's a whole tangent in itself. But I love the fact is that she kind of, like, the point was, like, at first I was like wondering what this was about. It's like, oh, a picture of these two together, and it's like, what? Francis looked in the floor room of the bottom floor of the hotel, and it's like, there's FBI there, and she's like, wait, there's FBI here, and it's like, oh yeah, that dude is talking to the FBI. That's the picture he wants to basically blackmail the dude. And she's like, wait, you didn't tell me the FBI was here. Is it this the FBI that you're working with? It's like, no, I have a select few agents, literally an entire task force that's under his belt, which he phrases it like that because he doesn't want to show the fact is that he's actually working for a task force. But nevertheless, so it's like, yeah, those agents are kind of out of that realm, so you kind of have to handle this on your own. So how are you going to handle it? She's like, ding dong ditch. And he starts laughing. He's like, ding dong ditch. He's like, I loved that game as a kid. And luckily she was able to quickly get the picture by knocking on the door, pushing the dude back, got the snap, wrapped it in plastic, jumped out the window, and love, she lands in the pool, and that little kid's there. She's like, cool noodle. And then kind of gets out the pool, and then Reddington's so happy. He's like, oh, he's actually like, look, Francesca, she's super impressive. He really likes her. Now, he liked her before, but he's like, oh yeah, she's really, really good. And it's just like, oh, she gets in the car. It's like, oh wow, look at this. It's like, is our debt kind of good? Because it's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. He's like, oh, ding dong ditch. He's like, I love it. So, and you almost see this look on Francis's face, like, oh, like she's kind of liking it too, like working with him. I mean, obviously, I think everything she said to Dembe last episode about like, oh, the fact of the matter is he isn't what she thought he was. I think she's actually kind of interested because she finds him fascinating. But then what's really interesting is that they looked into this situation later on, and it turns out like, oh wait, she's not married, she's single. So we see that she's at her own place. It's like, it begs the question like, yo, why were you lying about the fact that you had a husband? Part of me was wondering is the fact did she do that just so that Reddington thinks like, oh, she has a better life than she does? Maybe it's the sense of like kind of making so she has someone so he's less likely to kill her when it's all said and done. Is that what it's supposed to be? Or was it a situation of a life that she almost had that she's kind of like, she pulled like maybe there really was a Paul, but maybe nothing ever happened between them. Maybe she never got engaged. It says she's single. That doesn't mean like, well, because I feel like records probably would have come up about the fact that she's divorced or something. Not unless it's a thing of like, that's not even her real name or something like that. Like the fact is, and it's because if she was meeting up with someone else, that'd be something different. But she was just at home drinking and eating Chinese food, so it's like, why make it seem like you're more extravagant than you are? Like maybe she's got a bit of a past she's trying to hide, because even she kept up the lie to be like, oh yeah, we're at the restaurant. It's like, oh Paul, let him know that you're such a, how great he's got it. And it's like, I remind him every day. And I'm like, Not less like her and Paul never got married, but maybe, like I said, maybe they were engaged, and the fact of the matter is he died. But I feel like that would have come up in the background, but maybe a lot of her background has kind of been redacted. I don't know, because they say, like, I think they said Glenn was looking into it, so I don't know what to make of that. Like, I thought that was kind of interesting. But she's like, oh, can I get back to you on the whole potentially working with you thing? So I'm like, either she is working with someone else, either she's still playing him, which I think is what Reddington's trying to find out, But like I said, it seemed like she's interested. She probably just doesn't want to seem like too eager, but I think she likes the thought of like prospect of working with Reddington. So I think we're definitely going to see a lot more Francis this season. I think that's going to be pretty neat. I mean, it's just been him and Denbei for a while ever since Kate, you know. So it's like having someone else, someone in your inner circle, which is interesting. Kate went from an ally to an enemy, and Francis kind of went from an enemy to an ally. Potentially frenemy currently, I guess, where things will stand, but we'll see where things kind of go in that direction. The other part of this episode is Katarina making excuses to be in Liz's life, obviously telling, Liz doesn't know the circumstances around it, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm estranged with my daughter, I'm trying to be closer to her and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, I'm retired. It's like, well, technically all that's true. You're retired from the KGB, you're retired, or you and your daughter are a bit estranged, but under different circumstances. It's just interesting, like, it's not like she's 100% lying to Liz, she's telling the truth to a certain extent, so... But obviously she ends up replacing one of Agnes's dolls with a bug or whatever, so she can keep an eye on whatever information Liz has, because it's like whatever information Liz comes across, she'll mostly give to Reddington, so it always puts her a step ahead of Reddington at the very least. It's so interesting because they made the references to fairy tales and stuff like that, because there's lessons that can be learned in fairy tales about stuff that basically you can apply in your own life. And obviously, the whole, because I like Liz's perspective. Is that, the whole aspect of like, oh yeah, she likes fairy tales and stuff like that. She kind of doesn't like the whole like, well, Prince Charming to come save you, which is like, I'm sure that resonates in many different lanes, because obviously, Liz has kind of been independent on her own in many different regards, kind of like, handling things her own way, which I'm sure Katarina can appreciate, because Katarina handled a lot of stuff in her own right as well. So there's that whole circumstances of everything. But then later on, the story, well, for one, the fact is they've got an eye. They end up killing the illusionist, because it's like, oh, poor bastard, like he faked his death and everything, oh, got away. But it's like, Katarina's sadly caught up to, because for her it's like, oh, it sucks because I actually liked him, but he's got to go. He's got to go before Reddington gets there. And she left a note being like, you're good, but I'm better, Kay. So it's like a little bit of a gut punch. The one lead that could definitely lead him to Katarina, turned out that kind of blew up in his face. So beyond that, we'll kind of have to wait and see. And obviously he's still keeping it hush hush who this mysterious lady is that's after him and what's her connection to Katarina, even though she is Katarina herself, so there's that. But her reading that story to Agnes, Red Riding Hood, and obviously even the song that's playing is playing into the metaphor of like, oh yeah, like Granny is right here, and she's actually a big bad wolf in disguise, waiting to swallow up Little Red Riding Hood. As so it's just interesting. I mean, in that perspective, it's like in that regard, it's like who's Red Riding Hood, Liz or Agnes? They both technically are, I guess, to an extent, but her being it's so interesting because you can actually make the argument it's a wolf in granny disguise, just like it's a wolf in sheep clothing. So it's just that obviously the metaphor is there like blatantly, but it's just so interesting. If they had not pointed it out, I never would have made the comparison of thinking like, oh, she's the big bad wolf in disguise. It's like, because I mean, that kind of went with her nature of being a spy, so it's always been there, but now obviously she plays the role of, she is the wolf. Because the thing is, it's almost like she's not even like a wolf in Granny clothing, she is the wolf in Granny, it's like if Granny was the wolf, so that's kind of the parallel. It kind of reminds me of like Once Upon a Time, where ultimately, it's kind of a spoiler, but it's like Red Riding Hood ends up being the big bad wolf. It's a whole thing. It kind of reminds me of that. So I'm wondering, so it was just kind of interesting. And obviously, at first she was like, honestly, I was kind of worried about not being able to kind of make amends with my daughter. But it's like, now I'm a lot more hopeful because she's, now it's like, I think she's going to, it's like, oh, we get to know each other as strangers. But then eventually the time comes, I guess maybe getting rid of Reddington, revealing a lot of these secrets and stuff like that. She'll drop the bomb and be like, hey, I'm your mom. Because she already thinks, because, I mean, Liz is in that place where she's kind of caught between, I don't know whether to believe my mom's a good guy or a bad guy, because she even thought, like, Well, my mom, there's a lot of danger around my mom, and obviously she has a little more of an insight of her mom just because of the story that Dom told her. But like once again, that's not the entire truth, maybe because obviously there's something that both Dom and Red are hiding. So I guess because Reddington doesn't want Liz to have this fairy tale notion of what he'd rather her not know anything than have some fairy tale notion of what went really down. Because, like I said, it's either he romanticized it a little bit, like the truth about what went down. So, like I'm saying, he skewed it a little bit, or everything he told Liz, like 95% of it was a lie. Maybe it could be 50-50. Maybe some of it was a lie, some of it was the truth, some was the truth but misguided from his perspective, how he wants things to be remembered. Because everyone's got their own bias when they want to retell a story, So Katerina obviously looks at the story very differently, or at the very least, there's a chunk of the story we haven't gotten. Like I said, I brought that up previously. So I am very interested to see where this goes. Obviously, I'm sure Katerina is going to make a point to make it sure that Reddington is never around because Reddington does stop by Liz's place from time to time, but still, I don't know. Part of me is also wondering, is Liz on any level picking up the fact this might be Katerina? She might know a little more than she's letting on. Just the look she kept giving Katerina made me think that. Or maybe it's just kind of, looking at Katerina, not knowing it's Katerina, but looking at her circumstances probably makes her think of like, her own circumstances with her own mom. That's why she brings it up. But still, part of me wonders, is she thinking that? Is she not thinking it at all? Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see where this all ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.